Hello and welcome to the Inside the Track. Me and David are back again. This time we're talking about the other side of the Mersey because we are going to be talking about Everton. We obviously spoke about Liverpool yesterday. If you want to see that, it is on the channel. But today we're talking about Everton, what's been a very difficult season for the Toffees. They are in a relegation scrap, but what does that mean for the summer? Because obviously they could be trying to get players to get back into the Premier League or get players to push back up and give Toffee fans what they are used to. David, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Can't complain. Few good stories flying around at the minute on Merseyside. Lots to write about, so that's always helpful for us.
Yeah, it's going to be busy for you, I think, Merseyside-wise. There's going to be a lot going on, but let's look at Everton, David. They've obviously not had the best of seasons, not where they wanted to be again in a relegation scrap, but there they are. They are really in it now. I mean, they have to really get some good results, don't they? Otherwise, they're going to end up in the Championship.
Yeah, really difficult position. I think I keep looking at every game, and the Newcastle one. I thought, okay, if they lose that, they really could be gone. And then they lose that, and then a couple of results go for them, and then the Leicester result again. If you don't win that, I think surely this is it. They're gone. But again, results around them going for them, so they are hanging on. But I think got a couple of really difficult games coming up now. I think it's Brighton and then Manchester City, and I think it's very difficult given the way they've been playing at the moment to see them getting points out of that. And so I think it's a case where they've got to sit there and sort of see what happens with the teams around them over that 2-game period if they can't get anything out of it. And that's a really difficult and frustrating position to be in because, if teams around them start picking up wins in that period, then it could be out of the hands before they get into that 2-game period towards the end where I think they've got Wolves and then finish off against Bournemouth and it could be out of their hands by then. So they may not even be massive games. So, Evertonians will be, just fingers crossed that they can get something out of these next two, even as difficult as they are. And then, that can keep them in the mix for a big finish and sort of a dramatic escape again.
Yeah, and even the Bournemouth game, people probably would have been like, Everton fans at the time would have been, that's a good game to have at the end of the season. But
yeah,
Bournemouth have been going really well now and actually look like they're going to stay in the Premier League. Incredible job that Gary O'Neill's done there over the past few weeks as well. So it's not as easy as it looks now. It's all quite difficult. But they are the type of side, David, that Goodison Park, they could just see them nicking a 1-0 off City.
But this is it. I think Goodison Park played a big role in them staying up last season. Some of the home games they had there, most notably that sort of come from behind win against Crystal Palace to confirm that they were staying up. And I think they'll hope that they can even against the City team that is just swatting everyone aside at the moment that the Goodison element can really play a part and that they can get a really big win there. Because like I say, if they pick up any points in these next two, it's almost seen as a bonus because they look so difficult on paper. So if they can do that, it really will improve the position and give them a chance to sort of get out of there.
What I will say, obviously, is they have a number of players who are very good and will go if they go down. We can talk about a few of them. Not only that, I suppose what's in their favour is the fact that the others around them don't look like picking up points either. So it might come down to who picks up literally 2 points here and there. Sam Allardyce, I think, said 4 points could keep us up. I think that's what he said in the last 4 games. So it is that kind of situation. But let's look at Everton's summer. Let's look at what they're going to do going forward. So let's start on the goalkeeper. Jordan Pickford obviously signed that new long-term deal, David. And that was a commitment to it from him, of course, because Spurs were looking at him. They've got Chelsea kind of looking for a goalkeeper, a number of clubs who have looked at Pickford. However, if they are to get relegated, that's them just securing a good deal for him in summer, isn't it? With that contract till 2027.
But it was interesting because Everton were keen to sort of make clear at the time that Pickford signed his new deal that there was no relegation clause in there. It wasn't a case that, okay, he becomes available for X amount of money if Everton were to go down. So that was a real commitment from him. But I think alongside that will also mean that there's probably no drop in his wage if Everton were to be relegated. I think that would probably be how that negotiation would play out. And therefore, that means that, I think if Everton were to go down, then, you're looking at a situation where they're thinking, well, that's big money that they would probably need to get off the books, a very sellable asset. They've got, problems with FFP as things stand at the moment. And I think the rules around that in the Championship are a lot more harsh, really. They're a lot more sort of strict around enforcing things like points deduction. So that's something Everton are going to really have to be careful about. So Pickford sort of immediately jumps out as a really sellable asset and ability, gives them the ability to sort of raise funds if they were to go down. So yeah, I think that's one where that contract will be almost worth very little, worthy to go down in terms of, they would have to look at selling him on because he's England's number one. And I think from his side of things, as much as he loves Everton and I think would love to stay, really enjoy his time there. I think if he doesn't want to be playing Championship football and he needs to keep himself in the elite league to sort of stay as Gareth Southgate's number one, particularly when you've got Nick Pope at Newcastle, who's emerged as such strong competition for that starting spot for England. So yeah, Pickford's position, would really come into doubt, I think, if Everton were to be relegated.
And then they've got a problem because both their goalkeepers, and Lauren and Begovic, are actually out of contract in summer as well. So they might have to be going shopping for a new goalkeeper if that were to happen as well. So that could be a really key position for Everton in the transfer window in summer. Should they stay up, obviously they won't need to strengthen that area because they're not going to sit Pickford if they stay up, are they? They're just not going to do that because they have so many other areas that they'll need to strengthen first. Do you know what I mean? Let's talk about in defence. They've obviously got a Cody on loan from Wolves. There is an option to buy in there. We believe it's about 4.5. It's not a lot of money. It's about 4.5 to £6 million, something in that ballpark. It's not a massive fee. And when Sean Dyche came in, he spoke about him in glowing terms. I was being told Sean Dyche would like to keep him there, but he has gone back, hasn't he, to his Keane, Tarkowski, because it's what he knew at Burnley. And Conor Cody's actually not played as much, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, Dyche was actually asked about this in his press conference yesterday and sort of said, look, I can only pick 11 players. The players who are behind those first choice, they've just got to keep doing what they do and keep knocking on the door. But he was also very defensive about how Michael Keane has played recently and sort of said, even though some of the fans have sort of voiced doubts around him, that he feels Keane is doing a really good job. So it looks very unlikely that between now and the end of the season, we're going to see much more of Conor Cody, to be honest, which is, a big turnaround really, because the start of his Everton career was doing really well. He was getting starts under Frank Lampard and was really liked by the fans. And he had that, decent run of sort of defensively at the start of the season. And he was a big part of that. So, it's not really looking good for him in terms of, whatever happens in terms of relegation. If Sean Dyche is still in post next season, it doesn't really look like he massively fancies Cody. And I think the whole point of him leaving Wolves on loan was to play football this season. That was all that was about. He wasn't, not desperate to get away from Wolves. He loves that club, but it was just, I want to play football as regularly as possible. So if Dyche stays, which I think will happen whether they go up or down, I think, Conor Cody's future at Everton looks in doubt at the minute. I would add that we're not really hearing anything from the players' side on this. He's one to sort of keep his counsel around decisions like this, and I think doesn't want to cause a fuss or sort of make any sort of huge pronouncements about his future going forward just yet. I think he'll wait till the season's over and then the decision will be made on that front. But as I say, it's sort of looking quite unlikely at the moment that he will extend his Everton stay, particularly as I expect that Sean Dyche will be there next season no matter what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite the turnaround, actually, from when he came in to, I suppose, maybe 2 or 3 games after, second game Dyche was in or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Conor Cody, he's 30 years old now, but he's got that, he's such a leader, he's got that attitude, and he'll certainly be an asset to someone. I'm sure he's not going to struggle to get a club, a guy that's played so many games in the Premier League and played for England and all the stuff that he's done. Do you know what I mean? So he'll be fine. But then you have Yerry Mina in there as well, another player that's been quite key for Everton at times. He's out of contract in the summer. Looks like he's leaving out the door as well, David.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Yerry Mina will be sticking around regardless of what happens this season in terms of Everton maybe escaping relegation. Like you say, he's out of contract in the season. Probably he's looking at his options at this point and will believe, I imagine, that he can do better than in terms of being around a relegation battle. I think he would probably get a decent move somewhere across Europe and probably time for him to try something new. He's also on huge wages. So I think, for Everton to renew his contract, it would just be, even if they were to stay up, like I say, there's a very high possibility they might be involved in a relegation battle next season because they've still got all these money worries. They don't need to be tying themselves into long-term contract for a player who, his peak has played a lot of good games for Everton, been a really important player for them, but he's been very injury prone of late. And I think a part in other ways probably works for both parties at this point.
Yeah, it's another area again that Everton are going to probably have to strengthen no matter what league they're in. centre back, bringing in some numbers in there. They do have Holgate, they do have Godfrey as well, but they're both contracted to 2025. But again, what's their future look like? Where they're going to be? There's a lot up in the air as well there, David, with them. And then you've also got the fullback positions. Seamus Coleman is coming to the end of his contract at Everton as well. Got a really bad injury now as well, which is such a shame because he is just the ultimate professional. He's been fantastic for Everton's time there. I've not heard anything to suggest that that's talks are ongoing, and Sean Dyche has said himself anything like that we're not talking about. But there is nothing else from anyone else I'm hearing that actually would be extended, which could suggest that injury is actually, the end of his Everton career. It's a suggestion. I'm not saying it is, but it does look a little bit like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's an interesting one with Coleman because he was, there hadn't been talks for a while in terms of around his contract. That looked like one that was going to be resolved at the end of the season either way. I mean, from both sides, I think Coleman, Everton know they're not going to be messed around with him. I think he would have liked to sign a 12-month extension if he could, and I think that would be on the table there, particularly if Everton were to stay up. A lot of the contract situations have been looked at in terms of let's leave it towards the end of the season before we sort this out. And I think that Coleman was in the same boat. The injury has thrown a slight spanner in the works. Luckily, it's sort of emerged that it's not as bad as first feared. He hasn't damaged his ACL. And although, my understanding is he will miss the remainder of the season, that's not a huge surprise. The fact that it isn't an ACL damage means that, maybe he's not going to miss maybe a large chunk of next season. There's a chance that he could get back early into next season, which again throws up the possibility then of can he sign a 12-month extension knowing that he can play a part for Everton next season? How much of that rides on can we get an agreement in terms of what the wages look like, particularly if Everton go down to the Championship. But I think there's wiggle room there because, Coleman absolutely loves the club. He's spent so long of his career there. And I think there will be a real sort of desire on both sides to get a deal done. So it's good news on his injury. And I think that opens up the possibility of Coleman potentially staying on. But exactly what that deal looks like would probably have to wait till the relegation is confirmed or staying in the Premier League is confirmed. And then Everton will have a clearer picture of what they can offer Coleman and what he'd be willing to accept. So, yeah, it's good news really about his injury. And hopefully that means he can stay at Everton a little bit longer because what a fantastic servant he's been. And it would be a terrible way for him to end a great Everton career by, being stretched off in that fashion against Leicester.
And you actually see 34 years old, you could see 34 years of age, I should say, sorry. And you can actually just see he's still the one that's driving the team forward when he's playing. He's still the one with all that energy. And there's nobody with a bad word to say about Seamus Coleman at all. Nobody. It's just one of those guys, isn't he? Constantly professional. They have got Nathan Patterson there, obviously, signed from Rangers for £14 million. Contracted till 2027. He's on a long-term deal with the club. And I'm sure they'll want to see him feature more because he's struggled, whether that be injury or just for minutes, isn't he, David, as well? So that was someone else I want to bring in more. I want to talk about Ruben Vinagre that's been on loan from Sporting. There's an option to buy in there, I believe, David, but he's only made 2 appearances for Everton since he came in, and it doesn't look like he would likely to stay at this point, does it?
No, I expect him to go back to Sporting now. It's been a really disappointing loan spell. He's actually out at the moment with an injury that's expected to keep him out to the end of the season. So I think that's sort of the end of his Everton career already. And yeah, it's been a really sort of disappointing loan move. I think Mikolenko's been up and down in terms of his form this season. So there was a hope that Vinagre could maybe have, if things had worked out, he would have provided a little bit of competition at left back spot, but not really been rated by Frank Lampard and been pretty much injured since Dyche came in. So yeah, not one that's worked out, and he certainly won't be staying at Everton next season.
No, he's certainly looks like he's heading back to Portugal. And in the midfield, of course, one of the biggest players at the club, one of the most exciting young talents at the club is Amadou Onana. Obviously, he came in from Lille and great talent. You can see that he's got tons of potential there. Sometimes he might be, I suppose we would say Scotland, a bit scatty, a bit all over the place at times, but he's just so physical, a great player. But would be one they would lose, you would think, David, if they were to go down as well, because he's been a player that has had a lot of interest in him since he's joined Everton.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that sort of need to balance the books will come into play there if Everton were to go down. So, he is, like Pickford, we spoke about, a very saleable asset, someone who they think they could generate some money by letting go. And there has been talk of interest from a number of clubs in the Premier League, and Arsenal have been linked in the past. And yeah, I think his form has been a little patchy since he's been at Everton. But you like you say, I think you can really see that there's huge potential there, and I think a lot of other clubs have noticed that. So yeah, one who, if Everton go down, then that you'd expect him to be on the sale list, and possibly even if not, because I think, as I say, these FFP problems aren't going to go away whether Everton stay up or not. So maybe he's someone they see as, this can generate us some cash. We can rebuild with a younger squad and in fact find the next Onana, because I think that's what Everton need to do a little bit more of is find those players that they can sell on for big fees, put it back into the team and keep doing that regeneration, because they've lost their way in terms of that. They've spent a lot of money that they've not been able to recoup in recent years, and that's really been at the heart of the problems.
Yeah, and they've actually not got the biggest squad, Everton. I think they've got one of the smallest squads in the league too, and they are set to lose about 4 or 5 of those players in summer currently as well. So there could be a lot of work being needed to be done by Everton in summer. A lot of work. And that's, I hate to say it because everyone says it, but this is where they're going to have to look at how Brighton maybe do things, like, bringing in players that maybe you don't know. Because if Brighton sell McAllister to Liverpool, which is picking up pace, they'll have some other Argentinian who we've never heard of that comes in and turns out to be absolutely fantastic. So maybe everyone should be looking down that one route. 2 of the players who could leave, Decore, he's out of contract in 2023 as well. And then also Tom Davies as well, who was linked to a number of clubs in January. And actually, I think there was a belief that he probably would have left in January if the opportunity had arisen, but that didn't quite happen. So what's your thoughts on those 2, David? I think Decore probably more likely to stay if Everton can make that happen, right?
Yeah, Decore is one where they've got a 1-year option on that contract. So this is completely in the club's hands at the moment, where in terms of whether they believe he's worthy of extending and whether they should keep him, because his wages are up there. It must be said, one of the sort of higher earners. So that's a difficult decision for Everton to make. But maybe if they did stay up, then they'd see that as one who's worthwhile, because, like you said, there's so much sort of so many players going out of this squad already just by the fact that their contracts are about to expire. You don't want to give yourself too much to do next summer. Could you just get one more season out of Decore despite his wages being up there and sort of save yourself one job that you can postpone until the summer after in terms of looking for another midfielder? If Everton stay up, maybe that's something that appeals to them a little bit more. And on Tom Davies, no sort of progress in terms of contract discussions there. So, and as you say, it is generating interest already. So, maybe that's going to be time for him at the end of the season, regardless of how this pans out, to maybe move on and play a little bit more football elsewhere, because we haven't seen an awful lot of him of late. And maybe it is time to move on. As maybe hard as that might be for the player.
Yeah, he's not quite kicked on from when he came in. When he came in, you thought, oh, this guy's a player. And he's sure that's a great player, but he's just not had the opportunity to kick on. He's only 24 years old as well. Do you know what I mean, David? So plenty of football in him, and he probably is going to go and get that in January. I understand there was 4 or 5 clubs interested. I understood in January, and in summer they might come back again and think, do you know what, we're going to bring this guy in because he's fantastic. Yeah, but it wouldn't surprise me to see maybe them extend a Decore or someone, because they do not want to leave themselves with about 14 players for next season, which is a genuine possibility. At this point, we'll talk about Alex Iwobi. That's another one whose contract is coming to end not this summer, but in 2024. However, he's a player, my understanding is Everton are keen to hold on to. As I put out, I understand that there's actually been an offer from Everton, and Iwobi is waiting to accept that new long-term deal for about 4 years. But the problem is Iwobi, I think, is currently going to be waiting to see what league Everton are playing in next season, because he has got interest from Europe and England as well. So there's an offer on the table, and yeah, that's my knowledge, David, that he is waiting for that.
Yeah, and he's been quite impressive under Dyche, so you can see why Everton would be really sort of keen to keep him if they can. But it makes sense on the players' side to not commit to anything until Everton are maybe safe, because he doesn't want to find himself playing Championship football when there's that interest out there. And again, from Everton's side as well, I think as much as they're desperate to keep him and they want him to be part of an Everton team that's in the Premier League, again, it will probably end up being in that situation where if he didn't sign that new contract and they get to the end of the season, regardless of whether they're up or down, they've got a huge decision to make about whether they go forward with that contract or not. It's a difficult one because there is interest there. They could probably generate some money from selling him. But I think they will be reluctant to lose him because he, like I say, he's been one of the probably better performers this season. And fans have really taken to him as well. So it's one where Everton will hope, we can get safe and then tie Iwobi down and really build from there.
Andros Townsend's another one that's out of contract in 2023. He's obviously got a cruciate ligament injury. He's been great for Everton as well, Townsend. Well, he's coming about 31 years old now, David, as well. But could he be one of those ones that a cruciate ligament at 31? I mean, it's just not a good injury to get. But could he be one of those ones that for next season, I think will keep you just to keep the numbers, or do you think his exit's now more and more likely?
I just think, given his age and the fact he's coming off this bad injury, very very difficult to see Everton giving him any sort of extension, and maybe he's just one who leaves at the end of the season on a free transfer. It's a shame, really, because he made a big impact when he came in, and he has been a decent player for Everton when he's played. But the injuries it just really killed him, really, at the end of his Everton career. And it's, again, a sad way for him to leave the club, because, I think he's someone who could have been so useful to them this season in terms of helping them avoid relegation. You've really sort of missed that creativity and goal scoring, particularly with Dominic Calvert-Lewin out. So, Townsend would have played a big role, I'm sure of that. So, but yeah, it's difficult to see him extending his stay at Everton.
Scored one of the best goals I've ever seen in the Premier League, Andros Townsend, which was that volley against Manchester City, if you remember it. That was for Palace, wasn't it? That was absolutely exceptional. So he's a guy that's got incredible talent, experience. Yeah, I'm sure he's a big miss as well. Let's go quickly to the forwards. It's a difficult position for Everton this has been, because Calvert-Lewin obviously has had many injury problems, but is a fantastic player when he was available. They've brought Ellis Sims back, who was obviously out on loan on a couple of occasions with Sunderland and Hearts, and he's now come back into the fold. Maupay has not had the effect they wanted. He was actually, there was links that he could just leave in summer coming. He's only just arrived, contract to 2025. Let's start with Neil Maupay. Not happened for him as at Everton. I think there is now a building momentum that he could actually leave England in the summer and potentially end up in Europe, David.
Yeah, he's not really worked out, as you say. It's been difficult for him at Everton, not really provided that goal threat in the absence of Calvert-Lewin as Everton would hope. The thought was that he would be a really good foil to Calvert-Lewin, but then he's ended up trying to be played as a replacement, and it's just not worked. Very different sorts of players, so it's really not worked out for him. And I think, if there is interest elsewhere, and I think his agent has alluded to that fact, that there is going to be interest in him coming into this summer, then maybe he's one who's let go, because he probably doesn't want it. He's not had a good enough time of it at Everton for them to want to build around him going into the Championship or whatever. So, and again, another player who could generate funds if he were to be sold. He's got a decent record, hasn't he? So, maybe that's one where Everton would look to sort of part ways.
Well, certain striker at Coventry is someone that Everton like. Why don't you talk to us about? I always say his name wrong, but I'm going to say it the way you told me. Gyökeres, is that right?
Go for it. Yeah, it's about as right as I'm going to say it. Yeah.
I always say Gyökeres. I'm sure. Listen, someone can tell us in the comments, but we know Everton like him. Great player, fantastic player. Coventry's obviously, but Coventry are be doing all right this season, so we'll wait and see. However, what a player, and I expect he will be one that will be bid for in the summer, not just by Everton potentially, but by a number of clubs.
Yeah, I think one thing we can absolutely bank on this summer is that Everton are going to pursue a striker no matter what league they end up in. I think that's been a real huge need for them for a while. Not just in the case that maybe Calvert-Lewin leaves. I think it's sort of they need someone there regardless of whether Calvert-Lewin stays or not, because his injury record of late has been terrible, and they need a focal point in this team, particularly if it's going to be Sean Dyche, the manager as well, a player they can play off, who can link play, who can score goals. They've been so goal shy this season. It's been one of the biggest flaws in the team. So yeah, and his goal record for Coventry has been extremely impressive, and he's definitely a player that Everton like and have been watching closely. And I know there's a few other strikers out there who they've been linked to, who they've definitely also been watching, but he seems the strongest and probably most sensible link as well. I think he's even someone who, if Everton were relegated, that they would go to as someone to maybe build a team around, who could bring them back up. A lower league striker who's proved himself down there and could, but also has the potential to be a Premier League striker if they were to bounce immediately back. I think that's sort of the market that Everton should be shopping in, that young potential like that with a bit of a proven track record. So yeah, it's one that definitely makes sense to me, and a player that Everton likes. So it'll be interesting to see whether they revisit that, and whether they would revisit it if they were to stay up as well, whether they think that he's someone who can just definitely make that leap up to the Premier League.
Well, I mean, it would be Coventry's. If Coventry made it to the Premier League, he would be their star striker in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So, he's certainly someone who will believe he can do that, and he looks like all the attributes to do that as well. So I think a move will come his way, or the opportunity to play in the Premier League, whatever happens will come his way, David, and we'll see whether he is the man for the Premier League as well. Calvert-Lewin, let's touch on him because he's been so key to Everton, but like you said, his injuries have been very, very, very difficult for the club to have him missing. Is the opportunity for him to leave the club slimmer than it was because of that, David? Because clubs are now looking for a man that can come in who's going to be straight in and scoring goals straight away, and that's always the dream with a striker. But if they get a Calvert-Lewin who's struggling to get fit, that can be quite a difficult situation as well.
This is it. I mean, you go into this summer and say, okay, well, Everton need to make some money. They need to find some money to spend on other players, and Calvert-Lewin, surely they would sell him. But I think, finding a market for him is going to be much more difficult after this season because he just is barely played. He's been unable to stay fit, and that makes it really difficult. You remember previously there was talk of the likes of Arsenal being interested. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure that they would come back in for Calvert-Lewin now, given what has happened this season. It's been he's barely scored any goals in the last couple of seasons because of his injury problems. And that's something that's going to factor into the minds of potential suitors. They're not really going to probably go down that route if they think there's any concerns over him being able to get on the pitch. So it's a really difficult one, really, the position he finds himself in this summer. Maybe it ends up that there is still a club out there that believes they want to take a punt on him, and Everton, I doubt, would fight tooth and nail to keep him just purely on the basis that they need to get the money in, as I say, and he's had such a difficult time of it of late. I think that's a sale that they would probably be willing to make. But it's the huge deciding factor here is if there's a club out there that's willing to take him, that is of the level that Calvert-Lewin believes is a huge step up from Everton.
Yeah, and when he is fit, and firing, he's a phenomenal striker. And like you said, Arsenal, Tottenham, Newcastle, when the takeover was happening, there's been lots of clubs that linked to him. But yeah, whether he'd get that opportunity now, we'll have to wait and see. We'll just quickly, before we finish, touch on Sean Dyche. Obviously, he's come in and started well with a fantastic result against Arsenal, picked up some more points here and there as well, but it's been a difficult few weeks for him now. Fans are starting to get a little bit antsy, lots of pressure there. However, my understanding will be kind of whatever happens, I would still expect Sean Dyche to be in charge of Everton next year, David. I don't think it's someone that's going to disappear in the summer, for example. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, but I think Dyche, one of the reasons that he appealed was that, yes, he fought off relegation quite a few times at Burnley, but he also, has proven himself in terms of being able to bring sides up and build back after relegation as well. So I think that's something that would appeal to Everton because, if they were to go down, the worst would happen, then they really need to bounce back as soon as they possibly can. And Dyche has proven that he can do that before. So, I understand fans' frustration at the moment. The football hasn't been fantastic and Everton just aren't picking up results at the moment. But that's been true of the last few managers. So, I would say that Dyche, he's pretty calm and he's probably taking this in his stride and will believe that, he can keep them up. But if that doesn't happen and things go against them, that he's also the man to bring them back up. And he's got that on his track record. So, my understanding is there's no sort of discussion around him at the moment, particularly not until sort of we'd get to the end of the season and maybe relegation could have happened. But even then, he's got a really, really strong case when they were to look at the other candidates they could possibly bring in to manage them out of the Championship. Sean Dyche's name will be right up there in terms of people who can do that.
He's a smart man, Sean Dyche, as well. And I'm sure when the conversation happened for him to come in, he would have probably put himself in a decent position should they get relegated as well. He's probably worked that out as well. Well, there's a lot going on at Everton. Key games ahead, first and foremost for fans. Most importantly is the results to come. And if they can stay in the Premier League, it's a massive, massive summer as well. Potentially, should they go down or should they stay up? Thank you, David, for joining me again, mate, to talk about everything. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.